I'm putting myself through a course that I have contrived titled Finding Your Voice as an Artist. Finding your voice or unique signature style ain't easy. A lot of times it has to do with how hard it is to get outside yourself and see your artwork and processes objectively. The exercise that I'm presenting here is called the 5 questions. This video is a case study where I subject one of my recent paintings, 11 Yellow Pigments and Ultramarine Violet, to these 5 questions. The 5 questions are: 1. What's the genesis? 2. What fuels my passion? 3. How is it derivative or unoriginal? 4. How is it not derivative or maybe even original? And 5. How does this artwork evoke the zeitgeist of my time? Question 1. What's the genesis? In other words, where did I get the idea to do this particular piece? 11 Yellow Pigments is a creative response to some kind of boring practical considerations around costs and storage, and also, as I'm a neophyte painter, my need to learn the medium of oil painting. Not very sexy reasons to make an exalted work of fine art, but experience and art history has taught me that great things can have humble beginnings. For example, Andy Warhol started Interview magazine because he wanted to get free press passes to the New York Film Festival. One of the first things I noticed as a fledgling oil painter is the overwhelming variety of paint brands and pigments, and they all have their own subtleties. With yellow alone, there are even more than these 11 yellow pigments. How the heck do you know which one to use? Then proportions of oil and solvent, along with other admixtures like calcite or wax, have a huge impact on the paint's appearance. The real title of the painting is a list of all 12 paint brands and pigments: Williamsburg Nickel Yellow, Williamsburg Transparent Yellow Iron Oxide, Williamsburg Naples Yellow Italian, Michael Harding Genuine Naples Yellow Light, Michael Harding Genuine Naples Yellow Dark, RGH Hansa Yellow Light, RGH Hansa Yellow Deep, RGH Indian Yellow, Gamblin Cadmium Yellow Light, Blue Ridge Cadmium Yellow Deep, Blue Ridge Yellow Ochre, and Blue Ridge Ultramarine Violet. Question 2. What fuels my passion? Passion comes from deep, intense emotion. Basically, I'd say it's the confluence of love and hate, or something like that. For this question, I brainstormed a bullet point list of things that get me fired up. I hate pretension, disorder, discord, excess. I love simplicity, austerity, harmony, balance, and extreme subtlety. I love the human touch, the handmade. I love skillfulness, also known as mastery. I love the minimal when it contains the infinite, that is, when less truly is more, as with Shaker aesthetics. I love how beautiful straight out of the tube oil paint looks, like a note struck by a Steinway concert grand piano. I resonate with the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, which is an aesthetic philosophy and vision applied to objects, and alludes to beauty in imperfections and the value of the passage of time, and openly accepts the deterioration and transience of existence, both human and material. Thank you, Wikipedia. I love the elemental, the essential. I love the absence of ego along with random chance. In this case, I didn't choose the colors or mix any colors. They were chosen for me. Nor did I contrive some exotic method for applying oil paint. Perhaps ironically, I hate the ready-made, especially the dehumanized nature of the ready-made. I love American abstract expressionism and its Eastern sister, Korean dansaikwa. And I actually am outraged by the total lack of comparative data about the vast array of commercial pigments. What's better, Michael Harding Genuine Naples Yellow Dark or Williamsburg Naples Yellow Italian? What makes one genuine? Should I pay that much more for Old Holland paints? Okay, so blah, 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 blah. All right, now, allow me to share a deeper truth with you. I am desperately in love with the medium of oil paint. Everything about it. You wouldn't necessarily think that such passion lurks behind an unassuming artwork like 11 Yellow Pigments, but turns out it does. Question 3. How is it derivative? This piece is a color field grid painting. Color field painting is extremely well-trodden ground, going back at least as far as Matisse. I'm most aware of deriving inspiration from copying Ellsworth Kelly, Gerhard Richter, Bryce Marden, and probably James Turrell and Robert Irwin. But since I've seen through researching this question that there's been so much color field grid painting, I'm beginning to realize that making art is less about creating an original motif or genre and much more about your unique take, that is, your artistic voice. So it seems that yet another color field grid painting isn't too derivative as long as you do something personal, subjective, and idiosyncratic. For the purposes of this exercise, I created a brief survey of color field grid painters. Even an incomplete survey of the genre generates an intimidating list of very good and great artists who've produced color field grid art. The OG is Mondrian. What he did with this genre was basically a mic drop moment in art history. But then Mark Rothko achieved even greater greatness in this oeuvre. And Barnett Newman certainly was no slouch. And possibly my favorite, Agnes Martin, who, by the way, had a close personal relationship with Ad Reinhardt and was obviously influenced by him. Then Robert Irwin and James Turrell and Dan Flavin took it into 3D space. I put Callum Innes high on the list because what I'm doing with my technical studies is most similar in concept, though not execution, to what Innes does. Innes's works aren't technical studies, but his examination of essential color is at least a fraternal twin to what I'm doing. The material difference is in how my application of paint is informed by basic painting practices, whereas Innes uses solvent to dissolve off layers of paint. This looks like paint has been applied in thin washes. He calls these exposed paintings. I think they're awesome. The next most similar color field grid paintings are the color chart paintings by none other than Gerhard Richter. This is not something he just dabbled with. 137 color chart paintings are listed in the Richter Catalogue Raisonné. He even has a painting in this series titled 6 Yellows. Richter's color field grid work is very similar to what I'm doing, but occupies a different solar system conceptually. Next, Ellsworth Kelly, Colors for a Large Wall, painted in 1951, then Color Panels for a Large Wall, painted in 1978, look a lot like what I'm doing here with 11 Yellow Pigments. But his entire body of artwork is about the exploration of line, form, and color, which is not what I'm up to. Byron Kim is creating an ongoing work of portraits, synecdoche, that only uses the sitter's skin color. The entire work so far consists of 265 8x10-inch wood panels. Bryce Marden created a series of excellent color field paintings beginning in the early 60s. These include his Dylan painting, another called D'après la Marquise de la Solana from a painting by Goya, his Grove Group series, painted between 1972 to 73, The Seasons, and numerous others. Then there's John McLaughlin, Sean Scully, Charles Gaines, Carl Nell, Phil Simms, Rudolph de Crinius, Stanley Whitney, and Mary Obering, rounding out my incomplete list. 11 Yellow Pigments as an artwork has a lot of company. But is it too derivative? Question 4, how is it not derivative? As far as I'm able to discover, 11 Yellow Pigments is not derivative in how it uses color field grid to apply the musical genre of etudes to painting. Traditionally, etudes weren't created as music, but eventually composers, notably Chopin, wrote etudes as music. 11 Yellow Pigments is an etude that exercises several oil painting skills. Gesso application, I prepared each panel with 3 layers of gesso, plus a color ground. Fat over lean, each paint layer, 4 in all, is applied with successively higher ratios of oil to solvent, culminating in a glazing layer where the medium is made up entirely of linseed oil. Brushwork. Using the same flat hog bristle brush, I make only horizontal and vertical marks that create varied and interesting patterns. Color theory. I painted one panel with ultramarine violet, the nearest pigment to yellow's direct complement. Composition. The 12 rectangular panels form a square. Each has a different tint and value, so there are numerous compositional possibilities, not equally pleasing. Finally, by mixing each paint layer the same way as all the others, and by using paint directly from the tube, we get an objective comparison test of 11 yellow pigments. Conclusion: yes, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of other color field grid paintings, but this genre, despite how simple it is, appears to have an enormous capacity for originality and variety in terms of expression. So, if we're not going to say that Gerhard Richter's color charts are too derivative of Ellsworth Kelly, or that Sean Scully is too derivative of John McLaughlin, then I think we can say Julian Whatley isn't too derivative either. Question 5. How does this artwork express the zeitgeist of my time? One visit to any decent museum makes it pretty clear that art must express the zeitgeist of its time. Artworks in no small part function as sociological artifacts. Clearly, as an artist, it's important to be tapped into your own time. An artwork that's too out of date might be worse than an artwork that's too derivative. I do worry that 11 Yellow Pigments looks like something from the time of artists like Ellsworth Kelly, Sol LeWitt, and Donald Judd, even though I'm not interested in the same things that minimalist and conceptual artists like these guys were interested in. But have I created enough separation? Honestly, I'm not sure. Anyway, what is the zeitgeist of my time? My own observation is that during the last 20 years, art, along with the rest of the world, has been moving towards Ray Kurzweil's notion of the singularity, which basically means everything all at once. In contemporary art galleries, this looks like chaos, with artists frantically breaking rules and sacrificing sacred cows at the altar of originality. So this Kurzweil singularity, everything all at once, also looks like the disintegration of everything. There's no center of gravity per se. I think this is more or less what happens at the event horizon in a black hole. It's a moment of absolute destruction, but also a reset, and hopefully a rebirth. We also live in a moment when there is, at best, disdain for mastery, as though it's a quaint, obsolete, patriarchal artifact, and at worst, a total abdication to algorithms, automation, and artificial intelligence. I think a lot of people, even serious artists, would be appalled by the suggestion that they perform a task as unglamorous as painting 12 wood panels with 12 straight out of the tube pigments just to get a better feel for yellow. Unfortunately, there's just no escaping rigorous studies like these if you want to achieve mastery with oil painting. That is, if mastery is even worth attaining. I think it is. Against this backdrop, a technical study might be the ultimate form of reactionary artwork. Creating basic technical studies with oil paint, the most traditional of all media, is like the absorption of every possibility in painting, or a reset at this event horizon where painting has gone to die, or possibly be reborn. Final thoughts. The two most damning attacks against any art, maybe forever, have been 1. That's not art, and 2. My kid could do that. Critics said that about all of the most significant artists, from Monet to Picasso, to Pollock, to Warhol, to Basquiat, to Damien Hirst, which, I suppose, makes these attacks, paradoxically, the highest possible praise. 11 Yellow Pigments actually achieves these two most damning critiques. 1, it's literally not art because it's a technical study, and how can yellow ochre paint on a wood panel be art? So 2, your kid literally could do that. Anybody could. Of course, my rejoinder would be, 1, yes, it is art because I'm saying it is. The mega collector Dominique de Menil once said, "What is beautiful to the artist becomes beautiful." And 2, as the delightful Tracy Emin once said, "But your kid didn't do it." Okay, that's all well and good, but what about the real reason I did this whole exercise? Do I have a better understanding of my voice as an artist? I kind of feel like I do. Before going into this, I didn't know how desperately in love I was with oil paint. I should probably embrace that. Yes, I can do color studies and etudes, but I don't have to use those things to give me air cover for this mad love affair that I have with the medium itself.